Marcus Chun never thought keeping a diary would be dangerous. Back on Earth, it had been nothing more than a therapeutic habit his counselor recommended after the war. Now, aboard the massive alien vessel Dominion's Edge, floating somewhere in the Andromeda Galaxy, that simple leather-bound journal might cost him his life. The morning started like any other in his gilded cage. Marcus woke to the soft chime of the ship's artificial dawn cycle, the walls of his quarters gradually shifting from deep purple to warm gold. The Zephyrian Empire had given him luxury beyond imagination. A suite larger than most Earth apartments, with floor-to-ceiling windows that displayed the swirling cosmos beyond. Yet for all its grandeur, it remained a prison. He stretched his 6-foot frame and ran fingers through his disheveled brown hair. 3 months had passed since the Zephyrians had plucked him from the ruins of New Geneva, the last human stronghold to fall during the Terran-Zephyrian War. They claimed he was a cultural specimen, the sole surviving representative of humanity's military leadership. In reality, Marcus knew he was a trophy, a living reminder of their conquest. The Zephyrians were a proud, militaristic race, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with crystalline blue skin and silver hair that seemed to flow like liquid mercury. They possessed technology that made humanity's greatest achievements look like stone tools. Their empire spanned dozens of star systems, and their queen, Larilii Vex Shan, commanded the loyalty of trillions. Marcus had seen her only twice since his capture. Once during the formal ceremony where she had declared humanity extinct but honored, and again when she toured his quarters to ensure his comfort. Both times, she had spoken to him in perfect English, her voice carrying a musical quality that seemed to resonate in his chest. Her eyes, brilliant amber with flecks of gold, had studied him with an intensity that made him feel like a laboratory specimen. After his morning routine, Marcus settled at his desk with the diary. Writing had become his anchor to sanity in this alien world. Today's entry began like countless others. Day 94 aboard the Dominion's Edge. The isolation continues to wear on me. Sometimes I wonder if they're waiting for me to go insane, to become some pathetic example of human frailty. I refuse to give them that satisfaction. The Queen appeared in the observation deck yesterday, while I was watching the nebula clusters. She didn't speak, just stood there for maybe 10 minutes. I could feel her presence like electricity in the air. There's something about her that's different from the others, not just her rank, but something deeper. When she looks at me, it's not with the clinical detachment of her scientists or the barely concealed disgust of her generals. There's curiosity there, maybe even. Marcus paused, pen hovering over the page. What was it he saw in her gaze? He shook his head and continued writing. I'm probably projecting. Stockholm Syndrome, maybe. She's the enemy, the one who ordered the final assault on Earth. Billions died because of her decisions. I need to remember that no matter how lonely I get in this golden cage. But, God help me, sometimes when she looks at me, I forget she's the conqueror and I'm the conquered. Sometimes I just see a woman, if that word even applies, who seems as isolated as I am. The way her advisors defer to her isn't respect, it's fear. The way she carries herself speaks of burdens I can't imagine. Last night, I dreamed about her again. We were walking through a garden that looked like Earth's cherry blossoms, but the trees were the crystalline formations from her homeworld. She was asking me about human music, about how we express emotion through sound. Her hand touched mine, and it was warm, not the cold crystal I expected. I woke up confused and angry at myself. Why am I writing this? If anyone ever reads this journal, they'll think I've lost my mind. Maybe I have. Maybe that's exactly what she wants. Marcus closed the diary and secured it in his desk drawer, activated by his biometric signature. The Zephyrians had given him privacy within his quarters, a courtesy he found both suspicious and necessary for his mental health. He assumed they monitored his activities, but the diary remained his one secret sanctuary. The day proceeded with its usual rhythm. Dr. Veltar, his primary handler, arrived for their daily cultural exchange session. The elderly Zephyrian scientist treated these meetings as fascinating research opportunities, probing Marcus about human customs, emotions, and psychology with the enthusiasm of a child discovering new toys. "Tell me again about human courtship rituals," Dr. Veltar requested, his translator device rendering his musical language into precise English. The concept of romantic love remains puzzling to our sociologists. Marcus suppressed a bitter laugh. Romantic love is when two people choose to be together not for practical reasons, survival, politics, reproduction, but because they complete each other emotionally. They make each other better people. But this seems inefficient, Dr. Veltar noted, making rapid marks on his tablet. Zephyrian bonding pairs are selected based on genetic compatibility and social standing. Emotion clouds judgment. Maybe, Marcus replied, staring out at the stars. But those emotions also drive us to incredible achievements. Human history is full of people who built empires, created masterpieces, or sacrificed everything for love. Fascinating. And you have experienced this romantic love? The question caught Marcus off guard. Images flashed through his mind. Sarah's laugh, the way she curled up against him during thunderstorms, the letter she'd left him before deploying to the Titan defense station. The letter he'd never had a chance to answer. "Yes," he said quietly. "I have." Dr. Veltar made more notes. "The Queen has requested additional data on this topic. She finds human emotional complexity intriguing." Something in the scientist's tone made Marcus look at him sharply. "The Queen is interested in human emotions? Her Majesty is interested in understanding all aspects of the species she conquered. It is thorough leadership." But Marcus detected something else in the doctor's expression, a careful neutrality that suggested hidden depths to the Queen's interest. That evening, Marcus sat in his quarters reading one of the human literary classics the Zephyrians had provided. Apparently, they digitally preserved Earth's entire cultural database before the planet's destruction. The irony wasn't lost on him that his captors had saved humanity's art while destroying its people. He was deep into pride and prejudice, finding strange comfort in Austin's wit when the door chimed. No one ever visited him except Dr. Veltar, and never this late in the ship's night cycle. "Enter," Marcus called, expecting to see the doctor's familiar face. Instead, Queen Lyrelii Vex'Shan stepped through the doorway. Marcus shot to his feet, the book tumbling to the floor. She wore her formal court robes, flowing garments that seemed to be woven from starlight itself, shifting between deep purple and silver with each movement. Her silver hair was arranged in an elaborate crown-like style, and her amber eyes fixed on him with that same intense curiosity he'd noticed before. "Your Majesty," Marcus managed, unsure of the proper protocol. Should he bow? Kneel? The Zephyrians hadn't bothered teaching him their court etiquette. "Please sit," she said, her voice carrying that same musical quality that seemed to resonate in his bones. "I apologize for the intrusion, but I found myself curious about your evening activities." She moved with fluid grace to the window, gazing out at the nebula that painted the cosmos in shades of blue and gold. "You were reading human literature. Jane Austen, if I'm not mistaken. You're familiar with human authors?" Marcus asked, slowly sinking back into his chair. "I've been studying your species' cultural outputs extensively. Your literature reveals much about human psychology that battlefield reports cannot." She turned to face him, and Marcus was struck again by how her presence seemed to fill the room. "Tell me, what do you think of Elizabeth Bennet?" The question was so unexpected, so normal, that Marcus almost forgot he was talking to the conqueror of worlds. "She's complicated, proud, intelligent, willing to challenge social expectations. She makes mistakes, but learns from them. And Mr. Darcy? Arrogant at first, but capable of change. Their relationship works because they see past each other's flaws to the person beneath." Lyrelii nodded thoughtfully. "Love transforming pride into understanding. It's a theme that appears frequently in human stories. You've read a lot of our literature, more than my advisors would approve of, I'm sure." For the first time, Marcus detected what might have been amusement in her voice. "They believe I should focus on military strategies and resource allocation. But how can one truly conquer a species without understanding what makes them human? She moved closer, and Marcus caught a scent like ozone and winter air. Your people fascinated me long before the war began. Such a young species, yet you achieved so much in so little time. You created beauty alongside destruction, loved passionately while waging brutal conflicts. You never lost your capacity for hope, even when facing extinction. We weren't that special, Marcus said bitterly. You wiped us out easily enough. Did we? Lyraliai's eyes studied him intently. You're here. Humanity's essence, its stories, its dreams, its capacity for emotion, all preserved. Perhaps death and extinction are not the same thing. Before Marcus could respond, she moved to his desk. Her fingers traced the surface, stopping at the drawer where he kept his diary. You write daily. Dr. Veltar mentioned it in his reports. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. It's just processing thoughts, memories, a human trait I find admirable. We Zephyrians live in the present moment. Your species seems compelled to record, to remember, to find meaning in experience. She looked at him directly. What do you write about? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Marcus felt trapped between honesty and self-preservation. Earth mostly. People I knew. Trying to make sense of all this. Lyraliai moved away from the desk, but Marcus noticed her gaze lingering on the drawer. You must miss your home greatly. Every moment. And yet you've adapted. You engage with Dr. Veltar's questions. You maintain your physical health. You continue learning about her culture. Many prisoners would have given up by now. Maybe I'm just too stubborn to die. Something like a smile crossed her features. Yes, I believe you are. She moved toward the door, then paused. Marcus Chun. That is your full name, correct? Yes, Your Majesty. Tell me, Marcus Chun, in your human stories about love conquering pride, do the protagonists always know they're falling in love? Or does it sometimes surprise them? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stared at her, searching for hidden meaning in her amber eyes. But her expression remained carefully neutral. Sometimes, he managed, it surprises them completely. They think they hate each other until they realize the intensity of their feelings has transformed into something else entirely. Lyraliai nodded slowly. How interesting. Thank you for indulging my curiosity. She left without another word, the door sealing behind her with a soft hiss. Marcus remained frozen in his chair, his heart pounding as he replayed every word of their conversation. Her questions about love, her interest in his diary, the way she'd said his name. He looked toward his desk drawer, then forced himself to look away. Tomorrow he would write about this encounter, try to make sense of what had just happened. But tonight, he found himself staring out at the stars, wondering if the most powerful woman in the galaxy might be as lonely as he was. Outside his window, the Dominion's Edge continued its journey through space, carrying its cargo of one human prisoner and one Zephyrian queen toward an uncertain destiny among the stars. Marcus finally moved to pick up his fallen book, but his hands were shaking. The war between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire had ended with humanity's extinction, but something else was beginning in its place. Something that terrified him more than any battle he'd ever fought. As he prepared for sleep, Marcus couldn't shake the image of Lyraliai's amber eyes studying his desk drawer, or the way she'd asked about love surprising people. Tomorrow would bring new questions, new uncertainties, and perhaps new dangers to navigate in his gilded cage among the stars. But for tonight, he allowed himself to wonder what it meant that the queen of the Zephyrian Empire seemed as interested in understanding him as he was in understanding her. The next morning brought unwelcome revelations. Marcus discovered his carefully maintained routine had been shattered when Dr. Veltar arrived earlier than usual, accompanied by two imposing Zephyrian guards. The scientist's usual enthusiasm had been replaced by barely concealed nervousness. The Queen has requested your presence in the cultural archives, Dr. Veltar announced, avoiding Marcus's eyes. Immediately, Marcus felt his stomach drop. The cultural archives were deep within the ship's core, where the Zephyrians stored the collected knowledge of conquered civilizations. He had never been allowed access to such sensitive areas before. The journey through the ship's corridors revealed the true scale of the Dominion's edge. Marcus had spent months confined to a small section of guest quarters, but now he saw the vessel's military might firsthand. Squads of Zephyrian warriors moved with practiced precision through halls that could have housed Earth's largest stadiums. Weapons that could level cities were mounted on walls like artwork. The message was clear: resistance was futile. The cultural archives occupied a massive chamber at the ship's heart. Crystalline storage matrices reached toward a vaulted ceiling that disappeared into shadows, each one containing the essence of extinct civilizations. Marcus saw markers for dozens of species he'd never heard of, their histories reduced to glowing data points in an alien museum. At the chamber's center, Queen Lyralii waited beside a massive holographic display. Today she wore simpler robes in deep blue, her silver hair falling freely around her shoulders. She looked younger somehow, more approachable, though her amber eyes held the same intensity that made Marcus feel exposed. "Thank you for coming," she said, dismissing the guards with a gesture. "Dr." Veltar retreated to a respectful distance, busying himself with his tablets. "Did I have a choice?" Marcus asked, then immediately regretted the sharp tone. Antagonizing his captor served no purpose. "You always have choices, Marcus Chun. The question is whether you like the consequences." She activated the holographic display, and Earth appeared before them in painful detail. Blue oceans, green continents, swirling clouds, all exactly as Marcus remembered. "This was created from your planet's final transmissions," Lyralii explained. "Before our assault began, before your governments fell, when humanity still believed it could win." Marcus watched his homeworld rotate slowly, feeling a knife twist in his chest. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I want to understand what we destroyed." Lyralii's voice carried an emotion Marcus couldn't identify. "My generals see resources and strategic positions. My scientists see genetic templates and technological advancement. But you see home. You see 7 billion individual lives, each with their own loves, fears, dreams." The hologram zoomed in, showing cities Marcus recognized. New York, London, Tokyo, all intact, all teeming with digital representations of human activity. The detail was incredible. He could see individual buildings, vehicles moving through streets, even the parks where children played. "We monitored your communications for months before the invasion," Lyralii continued. "Every broadcast, every data transmission, every desperate military message as our fleets approached. Do you know what surprised our analysts most?" Marcus shook his head, not trusting his voice. "Even facing extinction, your species continued creating art. Musicians composed symphonies about the end of the world. Writers penned final poems. Parents recorded bedtime stories for children who might not live to hear them. You faced annihilation and chose beauty over despair." The hologram shifted, showing a massive library. Marcus recognized it as the Global Archive in Geneva, where humanity had desperately tried to preserve its cultural heritage. "We saved what we could," Lyralii said softly. "Every book, every song, every piece of human art. My scientists called it unnecessary, but I overruled them. A species that creates beauty, even in its final moments, deserves to be remembered." "Remembered by whom?" Marcus demanded, anger finally overcoming his caution. "You killed everyone who might have appreciated the gesture. What's the point of preserving human culture if there are no humans left to understand it?" "There is one human left." The words hung between them like an accusation. Marcus stared at her, seeing something in her amber eyes that made his breath catch. "You didn't capture me as a specimen," he realized. "You saved me." "I saved you," she confirmed. "Against the advice of my entire council, against military protocol, against the logical demands of imperial expansion. I saved one human because..." She trailed off, looking suddenly vulnerable. Because what? Because I couldn't bear the thought of letting your species disappear completely. Because in all our monitoring, in all our analysis, you were the human who intrigued me most. Marcus felt the world shifting around him. Everything he believed about his captivity, his purpose, his future, all of it was wrong. You studied me specifically? Your military records, your psychological profiles, even your personal communications before we jammed Earth's networks. Lyralii moved closer to the holographic Earth. Colonel Marcus Chun, decorated veteran of the Titan campaign, known for tactical brilliance and unusual compassion toward enemy prisoners. A soldier who wrote poetry in his spare time and carried pictures of a woman named Sarah Williams. The mention of Sarah's name hit Marcus like a physical blow. How do you know about? We know everything about you, Marcus Chun, including the fact that you kept a journal throughout the war. Your commanders thought it was a security risk, but you convinced them it helped you process trauma and make better decisions. Marcus felt ice in his veins. If they knew about his wartime journal, they might know about his current one. They might have been monitoring his private thoughts for months. The diary I keep now, he said carefully. Do you read it? No. The answer was immediate, firm. Your quarters are monitored for security purposes, but your personal writings are encrypted and private. I insisted on that much, despite my advisor's protests. Relief flooded through him, followed immediately by suspicion. Why would you give me that privacy? Because a diary without privacy is merely performance. I wanted you to have something that was truly yours, even in captivity. Lyralii manipulated the hologram again, showing scenes of human civilization at its height. Massive space stations, terraformed colonies, the great cities of Luna and Mars. All dead now, all reduced to expanding clouds of debris in space. In studying your species, I learned about human concepts of love, loyalty, sacrifice. You destroyed yourselves trying to protect each other. Soldiers died for squad mates they barely knew. Civilians shared their last food with strangers. Parents gave their lives for children who might not survive another day. Her voice grew softer, more personal. We Zephyrians don't understand such emotions. We're bred for efficiency, for conquest, for the expansion of empire. Love, as you call it, is seen as weakness, a distraction from duty. And yet you're interested in it, Marcus observed. I'm interested in what makes humans willing to die for it. She turned to face him directly. Dr. Veltar's reports describe your conversations about romantic love. You speak of it as a force that transcends logic, that drives people to achieve the impossible. Marcus remembered their previous evening's conversation, the careful way she'd questioned him about love and pride, surprise, and transformation. A terrible suspicion began to form in his mind. Your Majesty, he said slowly, why am I really here? In this chamber, looking at my destroyed homeworld, talking about human emotions. Lyralii was quiet for a long moment, her amber eyes fixed on the slowly rotating earth. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because I need to understand what's happening to me. What do you mean? For 3 months, I've told myself that my interest in you is purely academic. A conqueror studying her prize, a scholar examining an exotic specimen. But scholars don't visit their subjects in the evening to discuss literature. They don't ensure their comfort beyond basic necessities. They don't lose sleep wondering what the subject thinks of them. Marcus felt his world shift again, more dramatically this time. The queen of the Zephyrian Empire, conqueror of worlds, destroyer of humanity, was standing before him with something that looked remarkably like vulnerability in her eyes. You're saying, he began, not daring to finish the thought. I'm saying that studying human emotion has had an unexpected side effect. She moved closer to him, close enough that he could see flecks of gold swimming in her amber irises. I believe I'm experiencing what your species calls romantic love. The words hit Marcus like a supernova. He staggered backward, his mind reeling from the implications. That's impossible, he said. You destroyed my species. You killed billions of people. You can't love someone whose entire civilization you murdered. Can I? Lyreliai's voice carried pain now, raw and genuine. Do you think I chose to feel this way? Do you think I wanted to discover that the one being in the universe who completes me is the same being whose people I was duty-bound to destroy? Marcus stared at her, seeing for the first time past the crown, past the imperial authority, past the crystalline perfection of her alien features. He saw a woman, and, yes, despite everything, she was a woman, who looked as lost and confused as he felt. "This is insane," he whispered. "Yes," she agreed. "It is. And it's getting worse every day." She manipulated the hologram again, and Earth disappeared, replaced by text, communications intercept from the final days of the war. Marcus recognized some of them. Desperate military transmissions, civilian evacuation orders, final messages from orbital platforms as they fell to Zephyrian assault. "I've read every word your species transmitted in its final hours," Lyreliai said. "Every goodbye, every declaration of love, every promise to find each other in whatever comes after death. And I kept thinking about you, wondering if you had someone to say goodbye to." "I did," Marcus said quietly. "Her name was Sarah. She died defending the Titan station." "I know. I read her final transmission to you." Marcus felt his knees go weak. "You read, Marcus, if you're receiving this, it means the station is about to fall. I want you to know that every moment with you was worth 1,000 lifetimes. Don't let grief make you careless. Lie, my love. Live, and remember that we had something beautiful in an ugly universe. I'll be waiting for you, wherever souls go when their bodies fail." Hearing Sarah's words in Lyreliai's musical voice was like being stabbed in the heart. Marcus sank to his knees, overwhelmed by grief he thought he'd learned to manage. "Why?" he gasped. "Why are you doing this to me?" "Because I need you to understand that I know what I destroyed." Lyreliai knelt beside him, her hand hovering inches from his shoulder, but not quite making contact. "I need you to know that your loss isn't academic to me anymore. Every human who died had connections, relationships, loves like yours and Sarah's. I ended all of that. I bear the weight of 7 billion loves destroyed." Marcus looked up at her, seeing tears in her amber eyes. Actual tears from the queen who had ordered his species' extinction. "Then, why did you do it?" he demanded. "If you understand what love means, how could you destroy so much of it?" "Because I was following the only path I knew. Because conquest was my duty, my nature, my entire reason for existence." Her voice broke slightly. "Because I didn't understand what love was until it was too late. And now you think you love me. I know I do." The certainty in her voice was absolute. "These 3 months of watching you, learning from you, seeing how you maintain dignity and hope even in captivity, you've changed something fundamental in who I am. I dream about you. I find excuses to walk past your quarters. I memorized your daily routine so I could time my movements to catch glimpses of you." Marcus stared at her, his mind struggling to process this revelation. The most powerful being in the known galaxy was confessing to stalking him like a lovesick teenager. "You don't understand," he said. "What you're feeling isn't love. It's obsession, maybe guilt, probably some kind of psychological projection, is it?" Lyreliai stood and moved to another control panel. The hologram shifted again, showing scenes Marcus didn't recognize. Zephyrian worlds, their crystalline cities reaching toward alien skies. "Let me show you something." The images showed Zephyrian society in detail. Marcus saw the rigid hierarchy, the emotionless efficiency, the way her people moved through their lives like beautiful machines. Everything was perfectly ordered, sterile, cold. "This is my empire," Lyreliai said. "Trillions of beings living in perfect harmony, wanting for nothing, achieving greatness beyond measure. And it's empty, Marcus. It's all empty. There's no passion, no spontaneity, no art that comes from the heart rather than duty." The hologram showed her palace on the Zephyrian homeworld, vast halls filled with courtiers who bowed and scraped but never smiled, never showed genuine affection or warmth. "I ruled this empire for 2 centuries before I encountered humanity," she continued. "And In 2 centuries, no one ever challenged me, surprised me, made me laugh or cry, or feel anything beyond the satisfaction of duty fulfilled. And then, Marcus found himself asking, despite everything. And then, I met a human colonel who wrote poetry about war and loss, who treated enemy prisoners with kindness his own people couldn't understand, who carried a picture of a woman he loved more than his own life. She turned back to him, who showed me that existence without emotion isn't life at all. The weight of her confession settled over Marcus like a heavy blanket. He understood now why she'd saved him, why she'd given him luxury and privacy, why she'd spent evenings discussing literature with him. But understanding didn't make it any easier to accept. Even if what you're feeling is real, he said carefully, it doesn't change what you did. You can't love someone and simultaneously destroy everything they cared about. Can I? Pain flashed across her features. Humans fall in love with their conquerors all the time in your stories. Stockholm Syndrome, you call it. Is it so impossible that a conqueror might fall in love with her captive? Marcus had no answer for that. The idea was so far outside his understanding of normal relationships that his mind simply refused to process it properly. What do you want from me? He asked finally. I want you to help me understand what I've become. I want you to teach me about human love, about forgiveness, about redemption, if such a thing is possible. She moved closer again, and I want you to tell me if there's any chance, any possibility that you might someday feel for me even a fraction of what I feel for you. The question hung in the air between them, impossible and terrible and somehow necessary. Marcus stared into her amber eyes and saw his own future reflected there, a future that terrified him more than any battle he'd ever faced. Before he could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights bathed the chamber as Dr. Veltar rushed toward them, his tablet displaying urgent messages. Your Majesty, the scientist called, we're receiving emergency transmissions from the border fleets. The hegemony is massing for an attack on the Outer Rim colonies. Lyraliai's expression shifted instantly from vulnerable woman to imperial commander. Assemble my war council. Prepare for immediate departure to the battle zone. As she moved toward the chamber's exit, she paused beside Marcus. We'll continue this conversation later, she said softly. Think about what I've told you. Think about what might be possible between us. Then, she was gone, leaving Marcus alone in the chamber with the slowly rotating hologram of his dead home world and questions that threatened to tear his sanity apart. Dr. Veltar approached hesitantly. Colonel Shen, are you well? Marcus looked up at the concerned scientist, then back at the image of Earth. Everything he thought he knew about his captivity, his captor, and his future had been shattered in the space of an hour. No, he said quietly. I'm not well at all. As the ship began altering course toward whatever new battle awaited, Marcus remained kneeling in the cultural archives, surrounded by the preserved remnants of dead civilizations and the impossible confession of their conqueror. The queen of the Zephyrian Empire loved him. The woman who had ordered humanity's extinction was asking for his love in return. And, God help him, he wasn't entirely sure how he was going to answer. The battle with the hegemony lasted 3 days and changed everything. Marcus spent those days confined to his quarters while the Dominion's edge joined the massive Zephyrian fleet at the border systems. Through his windows, he watched the largest space battle in recorded history unfold in flashes of light and destruction. Hegemony dreadnoughts, massive beetle-like ships crewed by insectoid warriors, clashed with Zephyrian crystalline vessels in a dance of death that spanned light years. Dr. Veltar brought him updates when he could, his usual scientific detachment replaced by genuine worry. The hegemony caught us off guard, he explained during one brief visit. They've developed some kind of quantum disruption weapon that's proving effective against our shields. Marcus found himself in the strange position of hoping his captors would win. The hegemony was known for consuming conquered populations literally. They had no interest in preserving cultures or keeping prisoners alive. On the third day, the updates stopped coming entirely. Marcus was left alone with his thoughts and his diary, where he'd been attempting to process Lyraliai's impossible confession. Day 97. The Queen says she loves me. The Queen who destroyed my species, who killed 7 billion people, including the woman I plan to marry, believes she's fallen in love with me. The rational part of my mind insists this is some kind of psychological manipulation, but I saw her face when she spoke. That vulnerability wasn't performed. What terrifies me most isn't that she's lying. It's that she might be telling the truth. Because if she is, what does that make me? What does it say about my own mental state that I found myself studying her expressions, noticing how the light caught her hair, wondering what it would feel like to offer comfort to someone carrying such impossible burdens? Stockholm Syndrome. That's the clinical term. But Stockholm Syndrome is supposed to protect prisoners from psychological trauma. Is it still protective if the prisoner starts sympathizing with his captor's emotional pain? I dream about Sarah less frequently now. That guilt is eating me alive. How can I dishonor her memory by even considering feelings for the woman who killed her? How can I betray 7 billion dead humans for the sake of one living alien who claims to love me? But then I remember Lyraliai's tears when she spoke about understanding what she destroyed. I remember the way she preserved human culture not for study, but for remembrance. I remember that she saved my life when it would have been easier to let me die with the rest. What if redemption is possible? What if love really can conquer even the greatest sins? What if the most unlikely pairing in the universe, victim and destroyer, might somehow heal wounds that seemed eternal? I'm losing my mind. There's no other explanation for these thoughts. The entry was interrupted by the sharp chime of his door. Marcus looked up, expecting Dr. Veltar, but instead found 2 Zephyrian guards in full battle armor. Colonel Chun, the senior guard said formally, "You're to come with us immediately." "What's happening?" "The Queen is wounded. She's asking for you." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. Without hesitation, he followed the guards through corridors that showed clear signs of battle damage. Scorch marks decorated walls, emergency lighting cast eerie shadows, and medical teams rushed past carrying injured Zephyrians on floating stretchers. They led him to the ship's medical bay, a massive chamber filled with healing pods and diagnostic equipment that made Earth's most advanced hospitals look primitive. At the center of it all, Queen Lyraliai lay unconscious in a specialized treatment unit. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile. Her silver hair spread across the healing pod surface, and her perfect crystalline skin showed hairline cracks where whatever had injured her had broken through her natural armor. Monitoring displays showed vital signs in Zephyrian script, but Marcus didn't need translation to recognize the irregular patterns of someone fighting for life. "What happened?" Marcus asked the medical technician overseeing her treatment. "Hegemony boarding party breached the bridge," the technician replied without looking up from his instruments. The Queen refused to evacuate to the command bunker. She led the counterattack personally and took a quantum disruptor blastment for her tactical officer. Marcus stared at her unconscious form. Will she live? Unknown. The quantum disruption interfered with her cellular matrix. "We're attempting to stabilize her, but..." The technician trailed off, his expression grim. "But what?" "But her physiology is fighting the treatment. It's as if part of her doesn't want to heal." Marcus moved closer to the healing pod. Even unconscious and injured, Lyraliai retained an ethereal beauty that made his chest tight. Her face was peaceful, almost serene, but her vital signs continued their erratic dance. "She asked for me specifically?" Her last words before losing consciousness, the technician confirmed. "She said to bring you here if the worst happened." The implication hit Marcus like a physical blow. She was dying, and she wanted to see him before the end. "Can she hear me?" Unknown, but neural activity suggests some level of awareness. The medical experts believe familiar voices might help stabilize her condition. Marcus found himself reaching toward the pod, then stopped. What could he possibly say? What words could bridge the impossible gap between them? Lyralii, he said softly, using her given name for the first time. It's Marcus. I'm here. The monitors showed a slight change in her brain patterns, indicating some level of recognition. I've been thinking about what you told me, Marcus continued, feeling foolish but somehow compelled to speak. About love and redemption and impossible connections. I don't have answers yet, but I want you to know that I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to understand. Her breathing seemed to stabilize slightly. The battle is over, he said. Your people won. The hegemony forces are retreating. Your sacrifice saved thousands of lives. He paused, struggling with words he never thought he'd speak. You led from the front. Put yourself at risk for your people. I respect that. More changes in the neural patterns. The medical technician was watching both Marcus and the displays with intense interest. Keep talking, the technician urged. Her systems are responding to your voice. Marcus moved closer, his hand hovering just above the pod's surface. I understand now why your people follow you. It's not just fear or duty. You earn their loyalty through your actions. That's something humans always respected in our leaders. The irregular patterns on the monitors began to smooth out slightly. You asked me if I could ever feel for you what you feel for me. Marcus continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I don't know the answer to that. There's too much history, too much pain between us. But I want you to live long enough for us to find out. For the first time since arriving, he noticed tears on his own cheeks. You showed me the preserved archives of human culture. You could have let our art die with our people, but you chose to save it. That matters, Lyralii. Whatever else you've done, that choice matters. The healing pod hummed more quietly now, its emergency indicators fading from red to amber. I've been writing in my diary. Marcus found himself confessing. Writing about you, about the impossible situation we're in, about feelings I don't understand. You said you don't read it, but if you want to understand what's happening to me, maybe you should. Her eyes moved beneath closed lids, rapid motion that suggested dreaming or some level of conscious thought. Marcus made a decision that surprised him. He leaned closer to the pod, close enough that his breath fogged the transparent surface. If you die now, he said, you'll never know what might have been possible between us. And I'll never know either. So fight, Lyralii. Fight for the chance to find out if love really can overcome the past. The monitors stabilized completely. Her breathing deepened, became regular. The medical technician stared at his instruments in amazement. Remarkable, the technician murmured. Her cellular matrix is stabilizing. The quantum disruption is being naturally repaired. Marcus felt relief flood through him, followed immediately by confusion about the intensity of that relief. When had the Queen's survival become so important to him? Over the next several hours, Lyralii's condition continued to improve. Marcus remained by her side, despite the medical staff suggestions that he return to his quarters. He found himself talking to her unconscious form about everything and nothing. Human literature they discussed, the battle that had just ended, his own confusion about their impossible relationship. As the ship's night cycle approached, most of the medical staff departed, leaving only essential monitoring equipment. Marcus sat in a chair beside the healing pod, exhausted but unable to leave. You know, he said to her still form, Sarah used to say that love was the universe's way of proving magic still existed. I never understood what she meant until now. Lyralii's eyes opened. Marcus froze, caught between relief and terror as her amber gaze focused on him with crystal clarity. Marcus, she whispered, her voice hoarse but unmistakably alive. You're awake. It was a stupid thing to say, but his mind couldn't process anything more sophisticated. You stayed. Wonder colored her voice. Through the battle, through my injury, you stayed. The medical staff said familiar voices might help. Is that the only reason? Marcus stared into her eyes, seeing the same vulnerability he'd witnessed in the cultural archives. But now there was something else. Hope, fragile as spun glass, but undeniably present. No, he admitted. That's not the only reason. Lyralii attempted to sit up, wincing as her damaged cellular matrix protested the movement. Marcus found himself reaching out to steady her, his hand touching her arm before he could think about the implications. Her skin was warm, not the cold crystal he'd expected. The contact sent electricity through his nervous system, and he saw her eyes widen as if she felt it too. "The diary," she said suddenly. "You mentioned my diary while I was unconscious. Did you mean what you said?" Marcus's hand was still on her arm. He should pull away, re-establish proper distance between captor and captive, but somehow he couldn't. "About letting you read it?" "Yes, I meant it." "Why?" "Because you opened yourself to me completely in the archives. You showed me your vulnerabilities, your pain, your impossible feelings. If we're going to figure this out, whatever this is, then you deserve the same honesty from me." Lyreliai's free hand moved to cover his where it rested on her arm. "And if what you've written changes everything between us, then at least we'll know the truth." She studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to memorize every detail. "There are things in your diary that might hurt me. Probably. And things that might hurt you when I read them. Definitely. But you're willing to take that risk." Marcus realized that somewhere in the last few hours, he'd made a decision without consciously acknowledging it. The woman lying in this healing pod wasn't just his captor anymore. She was someone who'd risked her life for her people, someone who'd preserved his species' culture when she could have simply destroyed it, someone who'd looked him in the eyes and confessed to feelings that terrified her. She was someone he was beginning to care about despite every logical reason not to. "Yes," he said, "I'm willing to take that risk." Lyreliai's smile transformed her entire face. Not the careful, regal expression she wore in court, but something genuine and radiant and heartbreakingly beautiful. "Then, when we return to your quarters," she said, "perhaps you'll share those thoughts you've been recording. And perhaps I'll share some truths of my own." Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. Outside the medical bay, the Dominion's Edge continued its journey through space, carrying two beings who had begun as conqueror and conquered but were becoming something neither of them understood. The healing pod's monitors showed steady, healthy vital signs for both occupants, one recovering from near-fatal injury, the other from the certainty that love was impossible in a universe of such vast darkness. But as Lyreliai's hand tightened around his, and her amber eyes held his gaze, Marcus began to think that maybe Sarah had been right after all. Maybe love really was magic. And maybe, just maybe, it was powerful enough to bridge the gap between species, between victim and destroyer, between the deepest grief and the most unexpected hope. The universe was vast and cold and often cruel. But sitting in an alien medical bay, holding hands with the woman who had destroyed his world, Marcus discovered that even the darkest night could contain stars bright enough to navigate by. Whether those stars would lead to redemption or destruction remained to be seen. But for the first time since his capture, he was genuinely curious to find out. 3 days after Lyreliai's recovery, she came to his quarters at sunset, or what passed for sunset aboard a ship traveling between stars. Marcus had been expecting this visit, dreading and anticipating it in equal measure. His diary lay open on the desk between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm. "Are you certain about this?" Lyreliai asked, settling into the chair across from him. She wore simple civilian robes today, her silver hair unadorned, looking more like a woman visiting a friend than an empress examining her prisoner. "No," Marcus admitted, "but I've learned that certainty is overrated. 3 months ago, I was certain I'd never see Earth again. 2 weeks ago, I was certain I'd never care about my captor's well-being. Yesterday, I was certain that holding your hand in the medical bay was just momentary weakness. And now I'm not certain of anything except that I want to understand what's happening between us." Marcus gestured toward the diary. "This contains 4 months of thoughts I never expected anyone to read. Anger at you, grief for my people, confusion about my feelings, questions I couldn't answer alone." Lyreliai reached for the journal, then hesitated. "Once I read this, there's no going back. We'll both know exactly where we stand. Then, maybe it's time we found out. She opened the diary to the first entry, written the day after his capture. Marcus watched her face as she read, seeing her amber eyes widen at his initial fury, soften during his descriptions of loneliness, narrow with pain when he wrote about Sarah. Hours passed. Lyralii read every word while Marcus sat in silence, occasionally moving to bring her water or adjust the room's lighting. She showed no emotion except for subtle changes in her breathing, slight shifts in posture that betrayed the impact of his words. When she reached the more recent entries, the ones where his anger began mixing with curiosity, where his hatred started competing with unwilling attraction, Marcus saw tears begin to track down her crystalline cheeks. Finally, she closed the journal and looked at him directly. "You wrote about wanting to hate me," she said quietly, "about trying to maintain that hatred even as other feelings emerged. I thought hatred would be easier, cleaner. And now?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "Now I understand that feelings aren't that simple. You can hate someone's actions while recognizing their humanity. You can grieve for the past while remaining open to different possibilities for the future." Lyralii set the journal aside and moved to the window, gazing out at the starfield beyond. "You wrote about Stockholm Syndrome, about questioning your own mental state for developing positive feelings toward your captor." "Yes, but Stockholm Syndrome implies that the victim's feelings are manufactured as a survival mechanism. What if what you're feeling is simply recognition of who I actually am, beneath the role circumstances force me to play?" Marcus joined her at the window. "What do you mean? I want to show you something." Lyralii activated a small holographic projector, filling the space between them with images Marcus had never seen before. "These are from my personal archives, records I've never shared with anyone." The first image showed a younger Lyralii, perhaps equivalent to a human teenager, standing beside an older Zephyrian who shared her features. They were in a garden that took Marcus's breath away. Crystalline trees that seemed to sing with inner light, pools of liquid starlight, flowers that shifted through colors that had no names in any human language. "My father," Lyralii explained. "He ruled before me, and he was different from other Zephyrian leaders. He believed conquest could be achieved through integration rather than destruction, that conquered species could enrich our empire rather than simply serve it." The images shifted, showing Lyralii as a young woman working alongside various alien species, all of them integrated into Zephyrian society as equals rather than slaves. For 50 years, his policies worked. Our empire expanded through alliance and mutual benefit. Art flourished. Science advanced at unprecedented rates. I believed we were creating something beautiful. Marcus saw the love in her eyes as she spoke of her father, the pride in their shared vision. But he also sensed tragedy approaching. What happened? The old guard staged a coup. The images darkened, showing scenes of civil war that tore the empire apart. They claimed my father's softness had made us vulnerable, that conquered species couldn't be trusted, that only through fear and absolute dominance could we maintain order. Marcus watched Lyralii's face as younger versions of herself appeared in the holograms, fighting desperately to preserve her father's legacy. He saw her pressed into military service, forced to lead armies against her own beliefs to prevent total imperial collapse. "My father died in my arms," she whispered. "His last words were a plea for me to find another way, to remember that mercy was strength, not weakness." "But you couldn't," Marcus realized. "Not if you wanted to survive. For 150 years, I've ruled as the old guard demanded. Conquest through destruction. Absolute dominance. Zero tolerance for weakness." Her voice carried the weight of centuries. "I told myself I was protecting what remained of my father's empire, but really I was just protecting myself. It was easier to become what they expected than to fight for what I believed." The holograms shifted again, showing the final assault on Earth. Marcus saw the massive fleets, the devastating weapons, the methodical destruction of human civilization. But he also saw something he'd never expected: Lyraliai's face during the campaign, filled with pain rather than triumph. I hated every moment of it, she said. Every world we destroyed, every species we exterminated, every culture we erased. But I told myself it was necessary, that this was how empires survived, that sentiment was a luxury I couldn't afford. Until you encountered humanity. Until I encountered you. She turned to face him fully. Your species reminded me of everything I'd abandoned. Your willingness to die for each other, your creation of beauty even in the face of annihilation, your capacity for love that transcended logic. It was everything my father had tried to teach me about the strength found in compassion. Marcus felt something shift inside his chest. The woman standing before him wasn't the cold conqueror he'd imagined. She was someone who'd been shaped by loss and compromise, who'd sacrificed her true nature to survive in a hostile universe, who'd carried the weight of unwanted choices for over a century. The diary, she continued, reading your thoughts about struggling with unwanted feelings, about the complexity of hating actions while recognizing humanity. It's exactly what I've been experiencing about myself. I hate what I've become, but I'm trying to remember who I used to be. And who was that? Someone who believed love was stronger than fear. Someone who thought different species could find common ground. Someone who would have seen a captured human soldier not as a trophy, but as a potential friend. Lyraliai moved closer to him, close enough that he could see the patterns of light that moved through her crystalline skin like living circuitry. Marcus Chun, she said formally, I have a confession that goes beyond romantic feelings. You asked me once why I really saved you, why you were preserved when your species was destroyed. You said you couldn't bear to let humanity disappear completely. That was true, but incomplete. She reached for his hands, and this time Marcus didn't pull away. I saved you because in all our monitoring of Earth, in all our analysis of human behavior, you were the person who most reminded me of who I used to be. Marcus felt his breath catch. What do you mean? A military leader who showed mercy to enemies. A warrior who wrote poetry about the beauty he found even in destruction. A person who carried love for someone he'd lost, but refused to let that loss destroy his capacity for future connection. Her amber eyes searched his face. You were living the life I'd abandoned. You were proof that strength and compassion could coexist. The implications of her words settled over Marcus like dawn breaking across a dark landscape. You didn't save me as a specimen. You saved me as inspiration. I saved you because I thought if I could understand how you maintained hope and humanity in impossible circumstances, maybe I could find my way back to who I used to be. Marcus stared at her, feeling the last of his resistance crumble. This wasn't Stockholm Syndrome or psychological manipulation. This was two broken people recognizing themselves in each other, finding healing through the most unlikely connection imaginable. The question you asked me in the cultural archives, he said slowly, about whether I could ever feel for you what you feel for me, I shouldn't have asked. It was unfair to put that burden on you when you're grieving your entire species. I've been thinking about it anyway. Marcus tightened his grip on her hands. I've been thinking about what love actually means. Sarah used to say it wasn't about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone whose imperfections completed your own. Lyraliai went very still. And you're the furthest thing from perfect I can imagine. You've made choices that resulted in unthinkable loss. You've spent centuries compromising your values for survival. You destroyed my world and everyone I ever cared about. Pain flashed across her features, but Marcus continued. But you're also someone who preserved human culture when you could have simply erased it. Someone who gave me privacy and dignity when it would have been easier to treat me as property. Someone who risked her life for her people and asked for my help in finding redemption. He released one of her hands to touch her face, tracing the patterns of light beneath her skin. You're someone who's been carrying impossible burdens alone for over a century. Someone who's forgotten who she used to be and is trying to find her way back. Someone who's brave enough to love a man whose species she destroyed, even knowing he might never forgive her. Lyraliai's tears fell freely now, each one catching the light like liquid crystal. I can't promise you the kind of love you're looking for, Marcus continued. I can't pretend the past doesn't matter, or that forgiveness will be easy, or that I fully understand my own feelings yet. Then, what can you promise? Marcus leaned closer, close enough that their foreheads almost touched. I can promise to try. I can promise to help you find your way back to who you used to be, if you'll help me figure out who I'm becoming. I can promise that whatever this is between us, love, redemption, shared healing, I want to explore it, even knowing what I've done, even knowing what I am, because of what you've done and who you're trying to become. Marcus smiled, feeling something like hope bloom in his chest for the first time since Earth's fall. Someone once told me that love was the universe's way of proving magic still existed. Maybe our connection is proof that redemption is possible, even for the greatest sins. Lyraliai closed the distance between them, their lips meeting in a kiss that tasted of starlight and possibility. It was tentative at first, then deeper as they both surrendered to feelings that defied every logical objection. When they finally separated, Marcus saw something he'd never expected to see in the face of his captor: pure, unbridled joy. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we figure it out as we go. We learn about each other. We work through the impossible complexity of our situation. And we see if love really can bridge any gap. The Council will oppose this. A relationship between the Empress and a human prisoner will be seen as weakness, possibly treason." Marcus grinned, feeling more alive than he had since his capture. "Then, I guess we'll have to prove them wrong. Show them that love makes us stronger, not weaker." "You're suggesting we change the fundamental nature of the Zephyrian Empire?" "I'm suggesting we change the fundamental nature of everything. Start with us, expand outward. Create the kind of future your father would have wanted." Lyraliai laughed, a sound like crystal bells chiming in harmony. "You know, there are other human survivors scattered throughout the galaxy. Slaves, prisoners, refugees hiding in the outer systems. If we could find them, free them, give them a place in a reformed empire. Humanity doesn't have to be extinct," Marcus realized. "We could rebuild differently this time. Better. We could create something unprecedented. A true alliance of species based on mutual respect rather than domination." Her eyes shone with possibilities neither of them had dared imagine. "It would take decades, maybe centuries. We'd face opposition from every direction. Good thing we have time." Marcus kissed her again, tasting the future they might build together. Good thing love apparently makes people willing to attempt the impossible. Outside the window, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the small revolution taking place in a modest suite aboard the Dominion's edge. But revolutions, Marcus reflected, often began with the simplest acts of courage: a diary shared, a truth spoken, a hand offered in the darkness. The Queen had discovered his diary and asked if he loved her. He had frozen, terrified of the implications. Now, holding her in his arms while she planned the redemption of an empire, Marcus realized that sometimes the most frightening questions led to the most beautiful answers. The universe was vast and cold and often cruel, but it was also full of impossible connections, unexpected second chances, and the persistent hope that love really could conquer anything. Even the space between species, the weight of genocide, and the seemingly unbridgeable gap between destroyer and destroyed. Their story was just beginning, and for the first time since Earth fell, Marcus was eager to see how it would end.